Our last speaker before we proceed to the informal panel discussion was and is my own college professor, the powerful author of two best-selling books, Collectivism on the Campus and Brainwashing in the High Schools. He may also be America's greatest living poet. His work has appeared in the Freeman, Human Events, Christian Economics, Blue Book, National Review, New York Times, Literary Digest, New York Herald Tribune, and many other national periodicals. But I think the best way to introduce this associate editor of American Opinion is with a poem from one of his own books. He called it Will and Testament, and it reads like this: When I am dead, this be my will and codicil. To earth I do bequeath and give my fugitive obstreperous flesh for flour and wheat blithely to eat. My bones' enduring tracery I leave to be exhibit labeled categoric, man, prehistoric. Having no need of it past death, I give my breath to air that is the bird's abode and the sun's road. The world, her Maytime trees that loom white hills of bloom, her bluebirds like winged iris shaken with buds awaken, her cloud-deep skies or daisy thicket shading the cricket, I leave to any who, like me, has eyes to see. I give, if it persists, my song to bless and throng the swift 12 winds of the world that fly through all the sky, blown a winged thistle seed of sound toward its own ground. I yield the love that tortured me with ecstasy to any strong enough to bear joy of despair. As for my joy itself, I deed it to all who need it, hitchhikers seedy and too gray, or dogs astray at whom the careless hand has thrown the careful stone. Sadness that made my young heart grave I give to save all of earth's callous ones who go unhelped by woe. My loneliness to everyone who seeks the sun. To my Lord Don Quixote, hurled against the world by his own nobleness to be men's mockery, I will my madness to increase his tragic peace. My cowardice I keep, of such men have too much. To scholars for inheritance, my ignorance pure darkness, eager for truth's white amazing light. I deed my laughter to the wise to clear their eyes, and any surplus to a cow, for she knows how to moo and put a poker face on the world's grace, making by genial occult powers cream out of flowers. I give my anger and my hate to wake, though late, albino gentle souls that dwell meekly in hell. I will my lazy calm to bless their restlessness, who take 9 stitches to save one best left undone. I leave my strength to aid the rose against the snows, my patience to the snows that keep her safe asleep. I give the dawn for those to take who are awake, and last, I leave death whatever he can hold of me. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor E. Merrill Root.
Whenever I am to make a speech, I'm always reminded of a certain Irishman who in the good old days was driving a wagon loaded with black gunpowder. And in a moment of abstraction, he lit his pipe and tossed the still-lighted match over his shoulder. And as he went upward in the resulting chaos, they heard him exclaim, "Sure, and I always knew I could rise to the occasion." But what worries me is how I'll feel when I come down. But no matter how I feel when I'll come down, I am to speak to you briefly this morning on what is our struggle. Now, I think our struggle may be divided into 2 aspects. There is the negative and there is the positive. Thomas Carlyle once said that the spiritual life of man begins when we say an everlasting no to that which is false and to that which is evil. And our spiritual life completes itself and perfects itself when we say yes to truth, to right, and to beauty. Now, certainly we today must say the everlasting no And what is the false? What is the evil today? Is it not the collectivizing of the world? Is it not the reduction of private man to public mass? Is it not what C.S. Lewis called the abolition of man? And certainly we say no to that. And what are the forces that especially would bring about falsehood and evil? Well, they are the communists, those bully boys of politics. There are the socialists, whom we may call housebroken communists. And there are the liberals, whom we may call housebroken socialists. And against all of those, we say our everlasting no. And it is our distinction that we see also that beyond these and behind these, there are the spider men, there are the conspirators, there are the insiders. And these are the men who would reduce, who would use all these to secure their own wealth and to establish their own power. And they would bring about one world that it might be like a fat goose with its teeth between the neck of a fox, of course a red fox. And against the insiders, we say our everlasting no. Now, this brings about, of course, many results which are evil and to which we say the everlasting no. Education. Now, education ought to be an island of light in the dark, fickle tides of the secular world. An island of light where the best that man has done and said and been may be preserved. But what do we have? Well, we get education, the educators who are fantastic. And we get the educated who are fantastic. When the great hard hats rose in New York with their splendid gesture, Counterattack tells that they met a certain character near Pace College in Brooklyn. And this fellow, he was like King Lear, fantastically dressed in wildflowers, only he was dressed in dirty clothes. And he had long hair, so you couldn't tell whether he was he, she, or it. And he was, he was shaggy and rank as one of Robinson Crusoe's goats. And so one of the hard hats said to him, "Do they really let you into classes like that?" And he replied, "Heck, man, get with it. I'm one of the professors." Well, that's the fantastic educator. But we have also the fantastically educated. Tom Anderson, in one of his splendid columns, tells about something that happened recently. And he says this, and I quote, he says, "Guess who was named honorary homecoming queen by the Sacramento City College Executive Senate? You guessed it, Angela Davis. Indicted accessory to murder, Marxist, apprehended fugitive, traitor, homecoming theme was, we've only just begun." And unfortunately, they've only just begun. That's the sort of thing we have in our fantastic education. And to that we say an everlasting no. And this has brought about what I sometimes call the liberal hypnosis or the collectivist hypnosis. We're so ignorant, we're so misled, we're so propagandized that we don't know anything. For example, recently on the Grand Banks, there was a hassle. American lobstermen went there as they had a perfect right and tried to catch some lobsters. And the Soviet vessels and the Soviet satellite vessels drove right through their traps and destroyed them. And you would think that any American would say that is an evil and a false thing. But what did the Boston Globe say? Well, the Boston Globe said something so fantastic you wouldn't believe it if I didn't read it to you, and so I will. May 25th, 1971, a gentleman in the Boston Globe wrote this: "But there is also a human argument, and it is this, that while the whole affair really becomes offensive, even if the Russians are sworn to fulfill our enemy requirements, it's the argument of need. Here are these foreign vessels farming up a staple for the folks at home, and here barricading the banks at random." They've never been lobstering, I'm sure. Barricading the banks at random are a small group of lobstermen whose only purpose is to supply luxury items for a nation of people who already have too much to eat. Any thinking captain's rage would be legitimate. Any Soviet captain is a thinking captain. His rage is legitimate. How can you get more stupid than that? That is a new high of stupidity even for the Boston Globe. And that's the sort of thing we're up against. And to that we say an everlasting no. And yet that is only a part of our struggle. If we are merely anti, we are negative. If we are merely anti-collectivist, if someday, if it please God, we shall overthrow collectivism, what would be left? If we are to build, with Robert Welch, a better world, we need something that is good to put in the place of all this. And that's what we want. Now in our struggle, I think the three great words that are the theme song of this rally should be ours: for God, for family, for country. For God. Now the pseudo-intellectuals either think that God has died or they have killed him. And so, quite irreverently, they want to squirt God full of embalming fluid. I think God laughs. But at any rate, that's what they want to do. They want to kill God. Now, I don't want you to merely argue with them. I don't want you merely to prove rationally that God exists. That can be done. That should be done. I believe in theology. But there's something more than that. Maybe a far-off analogy will show what I mean. Scientists tell us that water is H2O. Now, that is true. That is useful. That is good. But I don't believe that most of us go around shouting, "Give me a drink of good old H2O." And I don't think that when we go in swimming, we say, "Let's take a bath in H2O." We don't say that. We say something else. We lift the cool glass to our lips. We drink the cool, pure water. God save us, it's not fluoridated, but we lift it to our lips and we drink it. Or with the strong Walt Whitman, we plunge into the surf and we say, "Cushion me soft, rock me in billowy drowse." We are the good swimmer into cleanness leaping. Now that is the experience of water. We know that water is wet. We know what water is. We know what water is good for. And as a far-off analogy, that I think is our experience. Now, do not suppose that I say God is material or that God is water. I'm not saying that. I say that by experience, by direct experience, by prayer, by communion, by touching him in our daily lives, we know him. God is nearer than hands or feet. He is closer than breathing. In him we live and move and have our being. His will is our peace. He made us for himself, and we are restless till we rest in him. Now that is the experience that we in our struggle should have of God. We should know that and then share it with others. And if we do, then we are bringing about the better world. And then the family. Now we know what the family is. We know that we love, we reverence, we honor our fathers and our mothers. We know their intelligence. We know their integrity. We know their inspiration. We know that they belong to us. They may be the great dead that steer the living, but we reverence them, we honor them, and we love them. And our children, not sentimentally, not permissively, but as a part of this great stream of the family going through history and beyond history. We love them, we reverence them, we honor them, and we bind them into one organic unity with us by something that is greater than them or greater than us. I think an illustration of what I mean may come in Pastor Wormbrandt's wonderful little book on the martyred church. He tells there how a certain pastor in communist Romania, Pastor Lupescu, had been taken by the communists, and they put him into jail, and they burned him with red-hot irons, and they cut him with razor-sharp knives, and they drove rats into his cell, and they forced him to stand up under the Klieg lights for hours. But he would not break down. He would not tell who his fellows in the martyred church were. And so they brought into the cell his 14-year-old son. And they beat the boy, and they beat the boy, and they beat the boy. And at last the pastor could not endure it longer. And he said, "Alexander, I must tell what they wish." And then the 14-year-old boy drew himself up, and he said, "Father, do not do me the dishonor to have a traitor for a father. If they beat me, I will die with the words, Jesus and fatherland upon my lips." And they did beat him, and he did die. But there was the family for you. There was the family, the parents and the children, with no generation gap, bound into one great organic unity by something greater than either. And that's what we wish. That is what we need. That is what we find in the family. And finally, our country. We love our country. We love her physical being. We love the gray rocks of Maine, where the Atlantic beats in vain, so strong they are. Oh, of course, I know that sometimes in Maine you smell a musky smell. And there are some people there who think we have a governor who's something like a Boy Scout left too long in bilge water. But in spite of that, the rocks of Maine are strong, and there our great American Winslow Homer painted them forever for us. And we love the high Sierras, thrusting their rocks of flint and their peaks of snow upward toward the stars. We love the Mississippi, Old Man River, the river of Mark Twain and Huckleberry Finn. We love the suave levels and the rolling hills of Indiana and Ohio. We love the green valleys and meadows of where the stars fall on Alabama. We love these things. We love them all. And we love also the founding fathers of our country, the great artists of our country. We love Herman Melville bidding us sail steadfastly against the proud commodores of this world, Patriot to heaven. We reverence Sir Ralph Waldo Emerson with his brave doctrine of self-reliance. We reverence Edgar Allan Poe with his noble melancholy and his southern landscapes. And we reverence, too, our own Longfellow and his wonderful words about Paul Revere, which I would quote to you as the very theme song of our meeting here. It was he in Paul Revere's Ride who wrote, a voice in the darkness, a knock at the door, and a word that shall echo forevermore. For born on the night wind of the past, through all our history to the last, in the hour of darkness and peril and need, the people will waken and listen and hear the hurrying hoofbeats of that steed and the midnight message of Paul Revere. That is what we know, that is what we reverence, that is what we say our everlasting yes. And because of this, because we say the everlasting no to falsehood and to evil, because we say the everlasting yes to truth and right and beauty, because we know God, because we know the family, because we know our country, I believe that under the providence of God we shall win. And I believe also that we here gathered and those like us are indeed children of the morning and people of the sun.